Hi, and welcome to another Type with me. This week I'm going to talk about type versus interface in TypeScript. So, types versus interfaces. So, in this video, I'm just going to walk you through how to write an interface, how to write a type, look at the differences because there are syntactic differences, right? And of course, I'm just going to show you what it does. So basically, an interface and a type describes the properties on an object, right? So let us first define an interface. So this is a very basic interface, right? It's an interface which is a user, and a user can have an ID, a first name, and a last name, right? And then of course we can just type a user because it's an user, an interface user, right? This is our interface, and then this is our object. So we describe what an object is, right? So now we can do the same with a type, and a type is a little bit different than an interface, right? Because then here you see that we have type user equals and then our definition of our type, right? Then we can say const user2, which is of a type user. Of course, we need to give it an ID, in this case 2. First name is going to be, of course, it needs to be 2 because it's a number and not a string, right? And then here I'm gonna say R2. And last name could be something like D2, right? Yeah, I'm also a Star Wars fan. Right, great. So this is our object user, and we are going to just say that it's of T user, but we can also say that it's of I user. So these things are more or less the same. The only differences are the syntax, right? How to define these. In this example, we can also define functions, right, with an interface and with a type. So we do it like this for an interface, and we do it like this for a type. Again, you see here equals, and here you see it's a little bit different. So the only differences right here are just syntactic sugar, right? So since TypeScript 2.2, we can very easily define an interface that extends T address, right? And again, another thing that's very important to notice is that this doesn't work, right? If we just do this, you'll see that we get an error. And then you think, why is that? Well, it's because we already defined iUser. iUser was defined before, right? Right here. Right here. iUser has been defined. And then, of course, we are going to define it here again. So it's just complaining, hey, I don't like it. What you also could do is it user, and then we can do something like this, and then you see that it's been solved. But these are mechanisms that you need to be aware of when you are working with interfaces and with types. So in this case, we can very easily extend an interface with a type. That's possible since TypeScript 2.2. So one thing that a type can do very easily is primitive aliasing, right? So this is something that we can do. We can say that type unique ID is just a string, right? And then we can say here ID is of type unique ID. That's something that we can do with an interface, right? We cannot say that interface unique ID is a string. We cannot do that. I cannot do this, right? That's a little bit, difficult. So if you want to alias a string array, for example, we can very easily do it like this. We can just define type t_roles equals string of an array and then interface i_roles, and then we can do something like this to mimic that, right? We can also very easily define tuples, so something like this is also possible. We can define a type employee, which is just a tuple of number and string, and then of course we just define an object Ellen, which is an employee, one Ellen, and then we have that, right? So an intersection of type is also possible, right? So we can define type name, type age, and then we can say that type person is of name and age, and then we have just that object person, right? It's also very easily to see that type person is equals to name and age, right? Another thing that you could do, right, is do a union. So what we could do then is do something like this, right? We could say that person is containing name or age, right? So if I then remove age, well, it's not a problem, right? It's still valid. If I just rename name, you'll see that he will complain and say, hey, we need either age or we need either name, right? Again, if I remove name, it will also be valid. So another thing that is not possible with a type, but it's possible with interface, and it's very powerful in my opinion. Sometimes you really need this in your application, is auto merge, right? You have already defined something like a definition for A, and then you want to override it or add it with extra functionality. Well, with type it's not possible. You will see here that we already have something like this, duplicate identifier A, right? So we don't like this. So what we can do is create an interface, which is this, and then have another interface, and that's also A. So what we now can do is we can do something like const A equals, and then you'll see that he needs a name and an age, right? So we can do name get or cast, and then age 23. But if you just remove it, you say, hey, I don't like it. So you need to have both then, right? Great. So in this video I discussed the differences between a type and an interface, what you could do with a type, what you could do with an interface, and how they are a little bit similar to each other, right? So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you now gonna use certain things like the type maybe more, because like I said, type has also very great things like the tuples, like the fact that you can just assign a primitive, right? Or that you can indeed do these unions, these intersects. So in my opinion, a great thing to know about. I am very happy that you joined this video. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much and see you next time.